How are we seeing the situation where big businesses and key sectors in Australia are facing less competition, and how has, I guess, the regulatory environment perhaps allowed for that?
Yeah, Heidi, it's a topic that certainly is come to the fore in the last, well, certainly in the last 2 weeks, but it's an omnipresent concern in Australia. And I think it's really put in sharp relief by last month's action by the competition regulator, which sued Coles and Woolworths, which control the supermarket sector in Australia, for allegedly making false discounts on hundreds of goods. So according to the competition regulator, they were keeping standard goods at certain prices for a long period of time, 6 months, even over a year in some cases, elevating them for a few weeks and then reducing them and claiming they were discounted goods when in fact they were higher than the prices they were at for a long period of time before. And since then, we've seen the government really move to act on this competition concern. It's, as you said, it's put more money into the competition commission to put more scrutiny on mergers and acquisitions. It's given it more money to really scrutinise the supermarket and retail sector. And I think this is particularly key now because we're in the end of an election cycle. We're due to have a federal election early next year by May 2025. And the cost of living is really up there, first or second concern amongst voters. So when you see topics like consumers allegedly getting gouged and misled when it comes to their grocery bills every week, which is one of the main drivers of inflation, government really has to act. And I think that's why it's a particular concern now, and we're seeing a lot of movement from the government. But outside of supermarkets, it's, you know, you can see a lack of competition in arguably maybe a dozen sectors in Australia that probably need action and aren't getting it.
So what about the sectors with the most concentrated competition then?
Well, look at the supermarkets, for instance. You've got Woolworths and Coles. They together have just over half the sector, and it's really pretty hard to go past those two. Aldi, yes, has grown in recent years, but it's a different kind of product lineup. Few people can really do all their grocery shoppings at Aldi, so it comes down to Coles and Woolworths, or Woolies as they're known colloquially. But beyond that, you look at aviation, we've got two dominant airlines. Qantas controls more than 60% of the market when you include its Jetstar low-cost offering. Retail, you've got Bunnings, controlled by Wesfarmers, and Woolworths also has retail arms. So in many cases, it's even difficult for consumers to know where they're shopping and who the ultimate owner is. When it comes to sort of low-cost retail. And then look at financial services. You've got four banks, NAB, ANZ, Westpac, and CBA control the vast majority of the mortgage market. It's very difficult to go past those four as well. And that's even before you get into the sort of the global lack of competition in internet search and app stores and things like that. So it's an area where consumers face little choice, and that means less pressure on the cost of day-to-day goods, less competition, and that has a whole trickle-down effect on, you know, a raft of key economic metrics which don't do the economy any favours.
Bloomberg's Angus Whitley there. Let's bring in for some analysis our next guest, who joins us to talk about the broader competition landscape. Tom Kirrath is a head of consumer research at Barrenjoey. Tom, really great to have you with us. So just picking up off, you know, the sort of context that Angus gave us before, how do you see this as potentially trickling through to the broader economy, to, you know, the nature of competition, the impact on consumers, on investors?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really topical debate we have with investors at the moment around competition. And unfortunately, there's no way to fix it. There's no way to bring in a whole lot more competition. If you look at you know, some of the statistics, you can see that Aldi has one share, Amazon has one share, and Bunnings has one share within the supermarket category as they've introduced new products. So we actually argue that the major two supermarkets have gradually been losing share over the past kind of 10 years. Would you like to see more competition in the industry? Absolutely, but it's just very hard to do that in a practical sense. So I think we will get some regulation come through and some clarity around what practices are fair, because obviously lifting prices for a couple of weeks and then doing a 50% discount, it doesn't seem fair to consumers. So I think the supermarkets will appreciate that, to be honest, having a bit more clarity around how to promote and how to communicate their promotions and their value to shoppers. But yeah, look, it has really weighed on the shares over the past kind of 6 or 12 months now, and it's something that, you know, it would be great to kind of put behind us, I suppose.
What are the sort of meaningful implications of these latest merger rules, the mandatory notification change? Do you think the implications are going to be dramatic?
I'm not sure they'll be dramatic. I just think it'll be harder to do M&A going forward, because the ACCC is taking a lot tougher stance on competition and M&A, which I think is probably almost reflecting on what's happened over the past, that they've probably been a bit too lenient. So I would say most of the major businesses in Australia, the retailers, for instance, that they'll struggle to do, you know, significant M&A, and even like single store acquisitions will be tricky as well. So, you know, hopefully that helps the independent sector and gives them some vibrancy and enables them to be a bit more competitive, which, you know, we're definitely seeing with the Metcash business, which supplies independent stores, that they've become a lot more competitive, and a viable alternative in a lot of industries to the major supermarkets or the hardware chains that are in the country at the moment.
So, Tom, what does this really tell us about how Australian regulators are looking at the landscape right now, especially with the actions from the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're taking a lot tougher stance on all M&A, and you can see that with the merger between Sigma and Chemist Warehouse that's currently on foot at the moment. The ACCC's had a really careful look at that, even though, you know, one business is a wholesaler in Sigma and Chemist Warehouse is a retailer. So I think you'll see a whole lot more scrutiny around M&A. And the diligence that the management teams will have to do to get these deals done will be more difficult. But the reality is, I think, as was pointed out earlier, there are a lot of industries that have, you know, a whole lot of market consolidation, and so you're probably not going to see, you know, wholesale M&A happen. You know, in certainly a bunch of the retail industries that are obviously, you know, really pressing for the consumer. You know, the consumer is very focused on value at the moment. And I think the ACCC is trying to, you know, help them out by, you know, increase the level of competition in the market at the moment.
So these lawsuits against Coles and Woolworths,
I wanted to ask about airlines specifically.
What does that mean for these companies? Sorry, I'll take it from here, Heidi, because I was still on the lawsuits from ACCC, where those are against Coles and Woolworths. What does that necessarily mean for these companies then, especially when it comes to the consumer trust and competition and also just their reputation?
Yeah, well, there has been a loss of consumer trust. We can see that. Both Coles and Woolworths publish their voice of the customer scores, which are surveys done by consumers as they leave the store, and both those metrics are lower than where they were in 2019 levels. That they kind of spiked during COVID, when, you know, supermarkets are everyone's friend, are the only place to go and spend your money, and they've really fallen, you know, dramatically. So I think one of the things they'll have to do is rebuild that trust, and there's a few ways that you can do that. One is by improving your offer and the value that you offer consumers, which, you know, they're actively doing at the moment, but there's probably some more work to do there. But I think the other one is that the rate of inflation is coming off, and so consumers, you know, going forward probably won't see the same magnitude of price increases coming through, which should help, you know, repair the reputations to some extent of Coles and Woolworths. But yeah, look, it's definitely something that is front of mind for both the management teams, and you know, we've got, you know, a couple of strategy days coming out and a new CEO at Woolworths. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how they grapple with those issues.